let's be honest. Most of the time when we argue, we're not really listening. We're loading up our next comeback, our next defense, our next punchline, ready to land it before the other person even finishes their sentence. That's not a conversation. That's a sparring match. And nobody wins those. So here's the challenge for your next conversation: argue less, talk more. Arguing is about scoring points. Talking is about building bridges. When you argue, the goal is to prove you're right. When you talk, the goal is to connect, to understand, to find a way forward together. Think about the last time you argued with someone. Did raising your voice make them suddenly say, "You're absolutely right, I see it now"? Probably not. What happens instead? Walls go up, ears shut down, pride kicks in, and the original problem never gets solved. But what happens when you just talk? When you ask a question instead of throwing a jab? When you repeat back what they said so they feel heard? That's when things start to shift. Because people don't want to be defeated in a conversation. They want to be understood. Here's a simple phrase that can change the whole tone. Help me understand. 3 words. That's it. You're not giving up your opinion. You're not rolling over. You're simply making space for clarity. And in that space, trust grows. Respect grows. Arguing is exhausting. Talking is productive. One drains the room. The other fills it with possibility. And here's the truth. You don't have to agree with someone to talk with them. Agreement is optional. Respect is not. So the next time you feel the urge to argue, to defend, to interrupt, to prove, pause. Take a breath. Shift the goal. Remember, argue less, talk more. Because conversations aren't about winners and losers. They're about connection. They're about moving forward. They're about understanding. And if you can master that shift, you'll notice something powerful. The people around you will listen more, share more, and open up more. Not because you won an argument, but because you chose to have a conversation. Arguing seeks to win, talking seeks to connect. Most of the time, when people step into a conversation that feels tense, they are already preparing for a battle. They want to win, to prove a point, to walk away with the satisfaction that they were right, and the other person was wrong. This mindset frames the entire exchange like a contest. The language gets sharper, the tone gets louder, and the body becomes defensive. Winning becomes the goal, but what is sacrificed in the process is the relationship itself. You may walk away with the sense that you won the moment, but the connection suffers, trust weakens, and the original issue rarely gets solved. When the focus is on winning, listening disappears. You can't truly listen while planning your next rebuttal. You're not hearing to understand, you're hearing to reply. That is the foundation of an argument. It is a constant volley of statements designed not to explore, but to overpower. But here's the question worth asking: even if you win the argument, did you really gain anything of value? If the cost of being right is breaking the bond, shutting someone down, or making them feel smaller, then the victory is hollow. Talking, on the other hand, seeks to connect. It has a different energy, a different aim. Talking isn't about me versus you. It's about us. When you talk, you open space for another perspective. You give the other person room to share without being cut off or silenced. You shift the focus from being right to being real. Talking is not weak. Talking is not giving up your stance. Talking is choosing to engage with respect, with curiosity, and with the willingness to see beyond your own angle. The difference lies in intention. Arguing asks, how do I win? Talking asks, how do we understand each other? Arguing is fueled by pride, by ego, by the need to stand above. Talking is fueled by connection, by clarity, by the desire to move forward together. When you talk, you build bridges instead of walls. You leave people with a sense of being heard rather than a sense of being silenced. Consider how people feel after a heated argument. Usually they feel drained, resentful, or even more convinced of their original position. Arguments rarely change minds, they only harden them. Now compare that with how people feel after a genuine conversation. They may still disagree, but they walk away feeling respected, valued, and understood. That difference comes from the choice to talk rather than argue. Talking requires restraint. It requires slowing down when everything inside you wants to speed up. It requires asking questions instead of firing statements. It requires repeating back what you heard to show you understood. These are simple shifts, but they change the entire atmosphere. When the other person feels that you're trying to connect instead of conquer, they relax, they listen back, they open up. Arguing is often about defending your pride. Talking is about preserving the relationship. One is about putting someone in their place. The other is about standing together in the same place even if you see things differently. And here's the reality: most conflicts in life don't need a winner. They need a resolution. They need a shared understanding. They need the people involved to walk away with dignity intact. When you find yourself tempted to argue, pause and check your intention. Are you here to win, or are you here to connect? If your answer is to win, then recognize the likely outcome: defensiveness, distance, and frustration. If your answer is to connect, then slow your pace, lower your voice, and shift your questions. That small change in focus can completely alter the direction of the conversation. Arguing is easy. Anyone can raise their voice and push their point. Talking is harder. It requires patience, humility, and the willingness to set aside the need to dominate. But it is in talking that relationships are preserved, progress is made, and genuine understanding becomes possible. People don't want to be defeated. They want to be understood. At the heart of nearly every conflict, argument, or disagreement, this truth sits quietly, waiting to be noticed. Most of the time, when someone raises their voice, repeats themselves, or digs in on their point of view, they're not actually trying to destroy the other side. They're trying to prove that their perspective matters. They want someone to hear them fully, not dismiss them. When they feel dismissed, they fight harder. When they feel heard, they soften. The drive for understanding is far stronger than the drive for victory, even though it often hides beneath the surface. Think about a time when you were frustrated in a conversation. What did you want most? Probably not to humiliate the other person, not to trap them in a corner, not to make them feel small. What you wanted was for them to listen, to pause long enough to take in your perspective, to show that they cared about how you saw things. That's the core of being understood. It doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean approval. It simply means acknowledgement. And acknowledgement can completely shift the direction of any exchange. When people feel defeated, they retreat, build walls, and protect themselves. You might win the moment, but you lose the relationship. The cost of crushing someone in conversation is their trust. They stop sharing openly. They stop being honest. They start avoiding you, not because they fear your argument, but because they no longer feel safe being real around you. On the other hand, when people feel understood, they feel safe. They relax into the dialogue. They are more open to hearing your perspective because they no longer feel like they are under attack. This is why understanding is so powerful. It removes the battle lines. It says, I see you. I hear you. Your experience matters. That doesn't erase differences. It doesn't suddenly solve every issue, but it builds a foundation of respect, and respect is where solutions grow. Without it, nothing moves forward. With it, even the hardest conversations can shift into opportunities for progress. Understanding begins with listening, real listening, not listening while preparing your next counterargument. Real listening means giving your full attention, setting aside the urge to correct, and allowing the other person to finish their thought without interruption. It also means checking in with clarifying questions. So what I hear you saying is, or do I have this right? These small actions prove that you're not just waiting for your turn to talk. You're actually present, actually taking in what they mean. That presence alone can disarm tension and create space for trust. Respect flows naturally from understanding. When you show someone that you are making an effort to hear them, even if you disagree with every detail, you are sending the message, you matter? That message is far more valuable than being proven right. Because once someone feels that they matter, they are far more likely to extend the same respect back to you. They lean in instead of pulling away. They listen instead of defending. The entire dynamic shifts because the human need to be understood is being met. Arguments fail when they are focused on victory. Conversations succeed when they are focused on understanding. Winning requires one side to lose. Understanding allows both sides to remain whole. It doesn't demand that one person abandon their beliefs, only that they recognize the beliefs of the other. This is why people who feel understood are more open to compromise, more willing to adjust, and more ready to meet in the middle. They no longer have to fight for validation. It has already been given. The next time you find yourself in a tense exchange, remember that the person across from you is not your enemy. They are another human being who wants exactly what you want, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. When you focus less on proving them wrong and more on proving that you understand, you transform the energy of the moment. You shift it from a contest to a connection. And in that shift, progress becomes possible. Help me understand. Create space for respect and clarity. Those three words are small but powerful. They change the tone of a conversation instantly. Instead of pushing back, Instead of escalating tension, they slow everything down and invite the other person to explain themselves. It signals that you are not there to attack, but to listen. It shows curiosity rather than combativeness. People respond very differently when they feel you are seeking to understand them rather than preparing to knock down what they just said. When conflict rises, it is easy to slip into defense mode. The instinct is to cut off, to interrupt, to hit back with your own perspective. That habit turns most discussions into arguments. But help me understand works like a reset button. It shifts the goal. The other person is no longer preparing to defend themselves from you. They are preparing to share more of their perspective. They are given the chance to lay out their reasoning, their feelings, their concerns. And in that space, tension softens. Respect starts to form because you've offered them the gift of being heard without judgment. Respect is one of the strongest currencies in any relationship, whether at work, at home, or with friends. People will open up where they feel respected, and they will shut down where they feel attacked. By saying, "Help me understand," you are giving them dignity. You are saying, in effect, "Your viewpoint matters enough for me to ask about it." That doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean you are surrendering your own opinion. It simply means you are willing to pause your argument long enough to learn more. And that willingness builds bridges. Clarity is the other gift that comes with this phrase. So often in heated moments, assumptions cloud the air. You assume you know why they said what they said. You assume you understand their intention. Many times, those assumptions are wrong. Asking for understanding clears the fog. It lets them spell out their meaning in their own words. And once the air is clear, you often find that the disagreement is smaller than it first appeared, or that you were arguing over two different interpretations of the same issue. Clarity makes solutions possible, and clarity can only come when someone takes the time to ask for it. There is also humility built into the phrase. Saying acknowledges that you don't know everything. It admits that you could be missing something. That humility is powerful. It lowers defenses on both sides. It communicates that you are not approaching the conversation as if you already have all the answers. People respect humility. They lean toward it because it makes them feel safe to share their truth. Think of how often conflicts spiral simply because no one stops to ask a genuine question. Two people dig their heels in, each convinced the other is wrong, each waiting for the chance to strike back. The whole exchange becomes about being louder or sharper. But if even one person in that moment says, "Help me understand," the tone changes. The other person feels invited rather than cornered. They get to explain instead of defend. That small pause can be enough to turn a fight into a real conversation. This phrase is also versatile. It can be used with strangers, coworkers, partners, or family. It works in professional settings when negotiations get tense. It works in personal relationships when emotions run high. It is neutral yet respectful. It doesn't put blame on anyone, and it doesn't raise the temperature of the moment. It just opens a door. And once the door is open, people are more likely to walk through it with honesty. Respect and clarity are the building blocks of trust. Without respect, people won't feel safe to share. Without clarity, misinterpretations pile up and create unnecessary conflict. Help me understand delivers both. It respects the other person enough to ask, and it clarifies the situation enough to move forward productively. Those three words may sound simple, but they hold the power to completely redirect the course of a conversation. Argue less, talk more. The goal is connection, not victory. So many conversations are approached like competitions. Two people face each other as if they are in a courtroom, gathering evidence, building cases, and waiting for their turn to deliver a closing argument. In that frame, the only possible outcomes are winning or losing. And when the focus is victory, the relationship itself often loses. The bond weakens, the trust shrinks, and both people walk away feeling more distant than before. The need to win comes at the expense of the need to connect. Connection shifts the entire purpose of communication. It says, "I value this relationship more than being right in this moment." Talking is the path to that kind of connection. Talking is not about silencing the other side or proving your point with sharper words. It is about creating an exchange where both people feel heard, respected, and safe. The goal of talking is not to crown a winner, but to walk away with mutual understanding. That understanding doesn't always mean agreement, but it always means dignity is preserved. When you argue, you listen with half an ear. You're already preparing your comeback before the other person has even finished their thought. That makes the other person feel ignored. But when you talk, you listen fully. You slow down. You stop thinking about the next move and start focusing on what's actually being said. That shift alone is powerful. It sends the message that you care about their words, not just your response. And when people feel cared for, they open up instead of closing off. The energy of an argument is about pressure. Voices rise, tension builds, tempers flare. People dig in deeper, defending their pride. But the energy of a real conversation is lighter. Even when the topic is serious, the tone is calmer, because the aim is not to crush the other side, but to walk forward together. Arguing escalates. Talking diffuses. Arguing puts people on edge. Talking brings them to the table. It is easy to confuse talking with weakness, but the opposite is true. It takes strength to resist the pull of an argument. It takes discipline to lower your voice when you want to raise it, to ask a question when you want to make a point, to pause when you want to pounce. Arguing is instinct. Talking is skill, and skill always takes more strength than instinct. When the focus is connection, the tools you use in conversation change. Instead of leading with accusations, you lead with questions. Instead of raising your tone, you slow it down. Instead of interrupting, you repeat back what you've heard to show you understood. Each of these choices builds a bridge. And those bridges are what keep relationships strong, even in moments of disagreement. Arguments are short-term victories that often lead to long-term damage. You might walk away with the satisfaction of being right, but the cost is distance in the relationship. Talking, however, but long-term trust. You may not get to slam down your point, but you walk away with closeness, respect, and the possibility of solutions. Those are the things that last. When people reflect on the conversations that changed their lives, they rarely mention arguments. They remember the times when someone really listened, when someone spoke calmly, when someone asked them to explain instead of shutting them down. They remember the moments of connection. That is the real prize, not victory, not points scored, but the feeling that someone cared enough to talk, not argue. Argue less, talk more. The difference is not just in the words spoken, but in the outcome created. One leaves people drained and distant. The other leaves them stronger and closer. One builds walls, the other builds bridges. The choice is always there in every conversation, and the goal worth pursuing is never victory but connection.